Hi coding students, this is a lecture about chapter 13 since we didn't have class yesterday. You will be expected to listen to this lecture. In your textbooks, open up to page 347 so you can follow along. This chapter introduces the surgery guidelines and general surgery subsection. This section is the largest in the CPT manual. Once we get inside the surgery section, then we go through by body system, okay? But all of those fall underneath the surgery section. The introduction on page 347, it's the largest section in the CPT manual, like I said. The codes range from 10021 all the way to 69990. It's divided into subsections, like I said, by medical specialty or body system. Take a moment to review those subsections of your CPT manual and also tab it if you haven't already so you have an understanding of the content of this important section. The notes and guidelines. Remember, we've talked about guidelines before. The guidelines are found at the very beginning of each of the CPT sections. Remember, they're those green pages, okay, at the very beginning. They define terms that are necessary to know for appropriately interpreting and reporting the procedures and the services contained in that section. The following is an example of the type of information that's in the surgery guidelines. So it would be worth it for you to open up your CPT book as well when we're done and just review those green pages. Okay, there's a couple of them. It talks about services, a reference explaining how to assign E&M codes. There's a definition in there about a surgical package, follow-up care, as you can read the rest of these bullets there on page 347. And then, like I said, hit those green pages and check them out. At the very bottom of the page, it says the guidelines contain information you'll need to know, okay, ahead of time in order to correctly code in that section. The most of the information is not repeated elsewhere in the section. So what you can find in the guidelines only appears in the guidelines. It's not, disseminated all throughout. Remember that with each new edition of the CPT manual, you'll need to review those guidelines to see if anything changes. The changes are indicated by those arrows, the newer revised text symbols, okay, that are used throughout the manual. If you turn the page to page 348, what I have highlighted there is in the middle. There's a lot of pictures here that we're going to skip over, but common throughout the CPT manual are notes. There are notes, helpful hints for us everywhere in the CPT manual. You just have to pay enough attention to them. You have to be slowing down and looking around, okay, before you code. Over on page 349, okay, it talks about the notes and the information not being in the guidelines as well. Always make it a practice to read the notes available before you're coding, like I just said. If notes are present, they must be followed if the coding is going to be accurate. Make it a practice to write in your coding books, okay? We've already done some of that. Highlight important points. Make notes in the margins. Personalize your coding manual. Every time we go through a chapter, we're going to make notes in that code book. Okay, then you have them when you're testing and you have them when you're doing your homework. So it works out really, really good. But the notes, remember, are not ones that are found in the guidelines. The guidelines are separate. They're stated right at the beginning of the section, and we follow them all the way through. Okay, turn the page. On page 350, the paragraph here says deleted codes. Okay, are also there and indicated in your CPT manual. They're in parentheses. Okay, and they give you a little example of that up above. Often the code that is used in place of the deleted code will be listed there. That's really nice because we don't have to start over. If we're looking for a code and, it's deleted, it tells you to, report, if you're going to report it, use this code. Perfect. Okay, I'll go to that code, check it out, make sure it's good. There we go. Okay. Unlisted procedures, we talked about these guys a little bit. Remember, they're the ones that always end in 99. Okay, they always come at the end of each section. I'm not going to read through the unlisted procedure part. On page 351, that exercise 13.1, I do have a note written in there. For all of these, so questions 1 through 6 there, for all of these, go to unlisted procedures in your index, and then you can find the answers there for that exercise. Special reports, there's something here. When using that unlisted procedure code, we talked about this a little bit too, okay? You have to send along a special report. You have to also add and attach a special report if you're going to use 9.9 to explain, okay, your situation. The little caution there is good. It says unlisted codes are assigned only after thorough research fails to reveal a more specific one. Remember, they're a last resort. You almost never use them. You should be able to find something that's already there, okay, usually. There's an example there that's really good. You could take the time to go through and read that. Separate procedure is a big deal. I want you to pay real close attention here. Make sure you understand this. And make sure you ask me about it at our next class period next Tuesday as well. For separate procedure, some procedure codes have the words separate procedure after their description. The terms separate procedure, okay, using that phrase behind that, does not mean that the procedure was the only procedure that was performed. Rather, it's an indication of how the code can be assigned, so when to use it and when not to. They tell us to locate code 1900 in your CPT manual. The breast biopsy code 19100 has the words separate procedure after the description. Okay, you can see that. Procedures followed by the words, okay, separate procedure in parentheses, are considered a minor procedure. So the ones where you see separate procedure, they're considered a minor procedure, and they're reported only when they're the only service performed. Okay, that's one thing. There's something else. Or when they're performed with another major procedure, but it's a different site or it's unrelated to that major procedure. When the minor procedure is performed in conjunction with a related major procedure, it's considered incidental and bundled into that major procedure, and we would not code it. Okay, so explaining all that out, kind of in layman's terms, if you're coding something, okay, and you see separate procedure behind that code description, it makes you go back to your work and say, is this the only thing that I'm doing? Yes. Okay, code it. You're done. If you see separate procedure, and I look back at my note, and this is the second or third thing that I'm doing, that I'm reporting. They did a few different procedures. And I say separate procedure. Is this the only thing I'm doing? No, I'm doing this and this and this and this and this. Well, is this considered included in one of these things? Don't code it. Throw it out. Don't code it. Is this considered really separate? Okay, a separate time or a different area? Okay, read through the note to see, and sometimes you do end up reporting it. Okay, it's going to make you stop when you see that separate procedure and say, wait a minute, do I or don't I? Okay, and it kind of stinks because sometimes it takes you a long time to find the code. You know, you got to go to the index and then you got to go to the tabular. And once you finally find it, your code description, then, I don't report this anyway. I just wasted my time. Okay. The two first examples there on page 352 are good. Okay. The first one says this is a situation where the separate procedure should be bundled into the major procedure. It says a breast biopsy has separate procedure after it. If a breast biopsy was performed in conjunction then with a modified radical mastectomy, only the mastectomy would be reported, the main procedure. The breast biopsy is considered part of that, or incidental, we call it. Because the breast biopsy and the mastectomy were conducted on the same body area during the same surgery, the breast biopsy would be considered a minor procedure that was incidental and would be bundled into that major procedure of the mastectomy. Okay? There's an exception. There's always an exception. A scenario where your separate procedure would not be bundled in can be illustrated in the following. This patient has a percutaneous breast biopsy, okay, there's our code again, and then is brought back to the operating room for extensive tissue removal by subcutaneous mastectomy on the same day. So we had a first situation, and then later in the day, a second situation. Almost like it was 2 different visits, okay? So it's a separate time. Now we can, okay? It's separate. We can report that separate procedure. It was something different, something separate. Then we would report it. Look at the second example, 2 separate procedures. If a breast biopsy, again, it says separate procedure behind it, was performed in conjunction with an esophagoscopy, both the breast biopsy and the esophagoscopy would be reported. They're on different body areas, totally different things, okay? Yes, we would report it. There's no relationship between a breast biopsy and esophagoscopy, okay? Then you would report it, okay? So look through those other 2 examples. Those first 2 I thought I would take the time to read through. They're really good about separate procedure. Don't forget about separate procedure. It's one thing students always forget about and get wrong, okay, because you didn't follow the rule with it. So that's a very important rule. Again, these are rules that are going to go through that whole surgery section, and it's the biggest one, remember. Surgical package is listed on page 353. Often the time, the effort, and the services rendered when accomplishing a procedure are bundled together to form what we call a surgical package. Payment is made for that one big package of services and not for every little single thing separately. Okay? If you want to read through this on page 353, because I don't want this video to be too long, I have the word global in parentheses in my margins here. A lot of times we say we're billing it globally, okay? And OB is the perfect example. You have so many visits being pregnant, right? You go every month down to so many weeks, and then you go every couple of weeks, and then you go every week, okay? That's a lot of visits, okay, while you're pregnant. Then you go in and deliver the baby, and then there's one visit after having the baby, okay? It's your postpartum follow-up or your 6 or 8 week visit. All of those visits are combined together and billed as one thing. We call that global. So every single time that patient comes in pregnant to the doctor, it's a no charge. We don't charge them, okay? Well, they'll be charged later on after the baby's been delivered and we have that final service done, okay? So we talk about global, okay, and billing globally for one whole package deal. Here on page 353, that's good to go through and read that. A lot of times also, if you have a mole removed and you had to have some kind of extensive stitches and you need to go back and have them out, or you need to have a dressing change, or you need to have something like that, anything afterwards that you have to have done that's considered because of the surgery or the procedure you had done is included. I don't get charged to have my stitches out. I don't get charged every time I have to go in for a dressing change. It's all included. Read through that page 353 and page 354 to make sure that you understand that. We're going to hit that a little bit in class when we get started next Tuesday. Something called our charge master we'll talk about. That will tell us if there's a global day period. So if there is a mole removal, we would find that code. And then you would look to see, oh, there's a 10-day global period. Anything for 10 days having to deal with that mole I had removed, dressing changes, stitches removal, just checking, okay, anything like that, is all covered and we don't charge separately for it. It's all included, okay? So read that and make sure you understand that. That little finger, check this out, is actually in your bookmarks in your class. You can take a look and see the fee schedule, and you can see the global days on all the different CPT codes. It's kind of cool to look at. The paragraph right above the CMS rules talks about another guideline for materials and supplies. So that's something good to read there. Page 355 has a good example at the bottom. I'm just trying to follow up because I'm going to be cut off here. And that's pretty much it. There is a couple things that we're going to hit when we start again on Tuesday. So make sure that you're ready for class and you get through this chapter and make the notes that we talked about.